Shalom. So I asked the question, why do you keep kosher? Why don't you keep kosher? Why is it hard for Jews to keep kosher in America? I wanted to give kind of a different perspective, or maybe even the same. In America, the answer is, we ask people, why do you keep kosher? Why don't you keep kosher? Why restrict ourselves from anything? Any food that's on God's earth. We live in a country, and you have to think about it. The country we live in, it has an effect even on our Judaism. What is America about? It's about freedom and liberty. Meaning, prosperity, having whatever you want, whenever you want, every fast food restaurant your way, right away, right? But I want to share a true story. I've been sitting on this for a long time. It was the week before Rosh Hashanah, and it was 2014. And I received this frantic email from a congregant. The subject line, "Rabbi, this is outrageous." I opened it up, and he said, "I want to make you aware of a program that's happening, that the city is running, BaconFest 2014, and it's on Yom Kippur." That's all he said. I was a bit confused, because I couldn't figure out what the issue was. Was he upset that there's this non-kosher food festival on the holiest day of the year? Was he worried about the message it sent? I say, email it back, "Thanks for bringing this to my attention. I just curious, why is this a concern to you?" Because I wanted to go. Well, true story. So I picked up the phone and I called the mayor. I said, "I am not allowed to endorse candidates. I'm not allowed to tell people to vote against candidates. But if you keep holding BaconFest on Yom Kippur, you will have my vote no matter what you do. Thank you for your continued service to this city." But it's a true story. For many American Jews, this is a real dilemma. Standing in judgment at synagogue or standing in line for a bacon sampler. America has been our land of opportunity and freedom. We've been able pretty much to live wherever we want, to be whatever we want, and to eat whatever we want. That's what many people look at as the beauty of America and what it's done for Jewry. Consider TV personalities Andrew Zimmern and Adam Richman, the hosts of Bizarre Foods and Man vs. Food, respectively. Both are Jewish. One of them went to Solomon Schechter growing up. In their shows, they eat stuff like they eat pig's blood stew, shark meat, and 180 oysters at one sitting. Now, that's a long way to go from their kosher kitchens of their ancestors of the past. And it got me thinking about the culture we live in. It's a culture of indulgence. And we've leaned into it. Even the kosher world. Think about the meat fests that you've been to. But Kashrut offers what I think is a countercultural path. As we heard about, it is the spiritual discipline of restraint in a world that glorifies excess. And the Torah teaches us why restraint matters. And we read about it in this week's Parsha. We're introduced to the laws of Kashrut. The dietary laws have become one of the defining practices of Jews across the century, across continents. The question is, why this practice? Why did it hold us so? Over the past 2 millennia, many have tried to explain the reasons for why we keep kosher. The most popular rationale through the ages, anyone know what it was? It's healthier. It's healthier to keep kosher. Right? Maimonides said that. Then when they figured out you can cook pork and get rid of the trichinosis, whatever, well, now it's healthy. So can I eat it? You can eat nothing but kosher potato chips, and you're not going to be healthy. I'm sorry to tell you. It's not going to make you healthy. Don't start the diet tomorrow. The truth is, there's only one reason why the Torah tells us to keep kosher. Because I said so. Think back to your childhood. You ask your parents, why can't I do that? And they give you an answer, you don't like it. And then what's the final answer? Because I said so. In the Torah, we hear a little bit of a more elevated version of that, and it's in this week's Parsha, Leviticus 11:45. For I, the Lord, am your God. You shall sanctify yourselves and be holy, for I am holy. Kashrut, we see here, right there, it's not about health. It's about holiness. The forbidden animals are described as tameh lachem, which is ritually impure for you. Doesn't mean that they're inherently evil. They're simply just not part of the Jewish people's spiritual diet, if you will. Kashrut limits what we can eat, and in doing so, it forces us to think differently about food, and especially meat. Our relationship with meat has dramatically changed over these last 100 years. My grandparents, who lived in Europe, this was before the war, if they had meat, it would be maybe once a week on Fridays, and it was chicken, not beef. Once a week was pretty much normal if you're lucky. But when they came to America, especially my family, meat became a sign that we made it. And it's common amongst immigrant communities and cultures. Abundance equals success. Who in here, you can't forget that scene from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? When the son-in-law comes in, he says, I'm a vegetarian, and she says, what? It's okay, you eat lamb. You don't eat no meat, it's okay, you eat lamb. So when meat, we think about when it becomes too easy, too cheap, too constant, we stop thinking about the holiness of it and the importance of it and the rarity of it. Eating a piece of lamb is not the same as eating a slice of apple. The Torah encourages us to ask different questions about food. As Carol mentioned in the first chapter of Genesis, Adam and Eve are told they can eat from any tree in the Garden of Eden except for one. Now, the implication is clear. They were to eat from vegetation, not the animals. They could name the animals, but they couldn't eat them. And this is the ideal world, according to many, including Rav Kook, that humans should be vegetarians. But after the flood, with Noah living not in Eden, but in the real world, the Torah permitted eating meat. But even then, there were conditions. Every creature that lives shall be yours to eat, but flesh with its lifeblood still in it you shall not eat. Some commentators suggest that this concession to eat meat was made because humanity had a taste for blood, for violence, and this would assuage it. Now fast forward to Shemini, and we have the laws of Kashrut and animals. Now the Torah begins to shape that concession to something more disciplined, to raise it up a little bit. Kind of like what Adam said, you know, we're okay here, but do we want to take a step back? Let's take a step up. And so certain animals are permitted, others are not. And later in Vayikra, in Leviticus 17, we're told that one must bring an animal to the tent of meeting to slaughter it properly. Anyone who slaughters an animal anywhere else incurs blood guilt. Now that worked when everyone lived around the Mishkan, when everyone was together. But what happens when Bnei Yisrael goes into the land? So we look in Devarim and Deuteronomy, certain concessions. You can slaughter and eat meat in your own towns, but only certain conditions. And someone has to do it for you. They have to slaughter it in the right way. And this type of meat in Deuteronomy is called basar ta'ava, a meat of craving. Or you could say a meat of lust. It's not just meat, it's meat driven by desire. But within that, there's a tone of reluctance, as if God is saying, if you must give in to your appetite, this is how you do it, but with limits. And in the Mishkan and the temple, the sacrifices, the meat, was synonymous with simcha, with joy. a sacred barbecue, if you will. And it teaches us that eating meat is allowed, but the type of meat, the quantity, and how much you share, that's what makes it holy. Now, Ramban Nachmanides takes it a step further. He suggests that the Torah forbids eating animals that are cruel and predatory by nature because ingesting them could actually influence our own character. And as a holy nation, he said the Jewish people must strive for compassion and not cruelty. The Kedushat Levi was a Hasidic sage who lived very poorly and likely ate very little meat, cites the prophet Joel's vision that one day all Jews will become prophets. And he writes, for God to communicate with us, our bodies must be vessels of sensitivity and love. The divine presence cannot address a mouth fed on unclean and abhorrent creatures. In other words, what we consume physically can impact what we're open to spiritually. This is, and think about the Shabbat dinner, it is an altar. And when we eat at those meals, we're not just enjoying a roast. We're enjoying the sacred act of eating as if we're in the temple. It's not just food. It's memory, it's meaning, it's mitzvah. It's everything. Kashrut is not a diet. Not a very good diet, at least. But it is a discipline. It's a way of grounding our spiritual awareness in something that we do every day that makes us no different than animals. We eat. But it extends beyond food. I want you to think about it. Every day, as Robert mentioned, every day we make decisions around food. What to cook, how to cook, who to share it with. And we ask ourselves, when we engage in kashrut, we ask ourselves, will our decisions in life be driven by hunger alone or something more? Kashrut begs us to ask ourselves the question, is this food kosher? Am I eating this meal with gratitude? Have I paused to say a blessing? Could I place a coin in the tzedakah box before I eat? But then it doesn't stop. We keep going up and up. Because kashrut, like everything in Judaism, is a ladder. It starts with avoiding non-kosher animals. Then we separate milk and meat, and we keep climbing. Was the food produced ethically? How were the animals treated? Was the land honored in its growth? Were the workers paid fairly? How do I speak to the person who's preparing my food? How do I treat them? Kashrut, at its heart, connects life and death, body and soul, the dinner table, and the divine. It transforms meals into mitzvot, forks into sacred tools. And like so much in Judaism, it's not just about the laws, it's about the values that the laws cultivate and create. Kashrut teaches us to extend intentionality into what comes out of our mouths, the speech, the words we say, virtues like patience, generosity, and restraint. And it reminds us that being Jewish is not just about what happens here, but what happens there, in the kitchen, at the grocery store, at your dinner table. And so maybe the old saying is true, you are what you eat. But in Judaism, we say it a little differently. You are what you choose to eat, how you eat it, and what that says about who you're trying to become. I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.